blood coming out of my head, my nose, my mouth. I was telling this police officer, please don't judge me, because... And that's the closest I've been to death.
Adam Rawlings.
Rotherham United women's football coach.
I'm here with Adam Rawlings. To be ambitious, what we wanted from today. Very, very high bar.
Adam is dedicated to the game of football.
Adam talks about what it takes to be a great women's football player in today's game. But for the first time, he tells a horrific and gory incident that changed his life forever.
In 2021, life took a little bit of a different turn for you. What happened?
It was the most poignant moment when this was the start of what is a really horrible demise. My skin was like literally hanging off. I remember them saying, lose too much blood. I now have to avoid people being on my left side. Christ, what is this like? I woke up in the hospital. The doctor was there with the two police officers. They said there are two things that we can do. We can...
How did the sergeant explain to you how?
Just said, that's a life sentence.
That night they gave you a life sentence?
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like you wanted to kill yourself?
I remember getting down on my knees and going...
I'm Ben Edwards, and you're listening to The Heart of It. A few years ago, life humbled me and made me take a long, hard look at my choices. One day, you're going to hear a lot of things about me. Some of those things I can't talk about right now, but I had to make a lot of changes. I lived a life fueled by shame, and shame cannot survive being spoken about. It needs these three things to survive: secrecy, silence, and judgment. So I made the decision to start talking about these things, and I'd like to invite you to listen to how that played out. This is the therapy that I never thought that I needed. Let's get to the heart of it.
Adam Rawlings, welcome to the heart of it.
Oh, yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome, mate.
Awesome.
Yeah, you like it?
Yeah, what a set.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, it's taken quite a long time to get it like this. Rotherham United women's football coach.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems a bit peculiar because I've actually only been there a short period of time now. So this will be maybe my third month in charge. And yeah, quite a journey. But to end up at a massive club in South Yorkshire, still, like as you say it now, seems a bit weird. But, yeah.
Women's football.
Yeah. I the journey into women's football was pretty, how would we say, like just the easiest judgment ever. At 16, I knew that I wasn't going to be like a legendary footballer, so I just stopped playing and coached. But I love football, so that's what I did. Went to uni, went to Hallam at Sheffield, and got into women's football pretty quickly there with the Uni of Sheffield women's team, which got me a lot of banter from the varsity side. But yeah, so that was my journey into women's football. Pretty easy step in. If I'd have played today, who knows? I was just a normal person who did the basics right. So maybe today I could have been decent. But yeah, women's football is where it's at.
So you did play football yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You made the conscious decision that you weren't good enough to make it?
Yeah.
Then why not men's coaching? Why women's?
I guess I am fairly materialistic. Like I wanted to get as high as I could, as fast as I could. And at the time, the women's game offered that, or like a quicker route to that. In the men's game, I knew that I was going to be coaching the little dots for a number of years before anything happened. So, yeah, that was literally it. Just the route that I wanted to take. The women's path offered me that, and I could impart more in the women's game compared to like some of the men coaches in the men's game are wild. Like they know far more than me. So I could impart more impact in the women's game as well.
It's quite. I think women's football has certainly come a long way recent months, certain years than what it was.
Yeah,
there's quite the PC world around talking about the pay, certainly, in football, and then the equal opportunities.
Yeah,
you mentioned that you got you thought there was more advantage for you to coach women than men for your own career. But that's not the same for the female football players.
Yeah. It's I don't know, maybe this is my 9th, 10th year in the women's game. I've coached from tier 4, tier 3 down, and 4 years ago in tier 4 there wasn't any sort of expense. There isn't anything like that. So for these conversations to be had for the individual players, like, that is a massive debate and a massive burden and a real injustice, if you like. But I think the sheer fact that we're having those conversations, for me as a male coach in the game, is a massive positive, and I see it as a massive step forward as opposed to a big rivalry and a big debate.
What is, for someone who doesn't know, what is the sort of salary difference between women's and men's football?
It's astronomical right now. I think the fact that Emma Hayes has just gone over to the USA, initially got paid the same as the USA men's manager, is like a massive step forward. But in terms of the pay difference, you're looking at like hundreds of millions of pounds. Like, it's an astronomical difference. But it's also based off of revenues and crowds and the funding from the governing bodies. So, and again, some of those things have moved, like the governing bodies move their investment forward. The crowds again move, but they're still a way away from the men's game, but it's going in the right direction, and hopefully that can be the difference between reducing that gap.
You mentioned Emma Hayes. Who's that?
She is the former Chelsea boss. Won like every title in the women's game. She moved across to take the USA women's team, and initially, and this might not be factual now because Pochettino's just gone across to the men's game, but the manager before, she was paid the exact same as him. That was a massive, significant move in the women's game.
Yeah, it's quite nice to be a Chelsea fan right now when people saying Chelsea have won. You think, huh? Oh, the women's.
Yeah.
Obviously, same. Emma has really done quite a job there.
Yeah.
Chelsea and Arsenal, really, the two leading female teams in the UK, right?
Yeah. More so as well. City now have come into the fold. So I think it's between Chelsea and City this season. Arsenal have dropped off a little bit just this season, but I'm sure they'll be back involved. So yeah, the more and more that the women's game grows, we were having this conversation the other day in our meeting actually, that the WSL seems to even out now. You see more like the teams like Liverpool, Tottenham, Man United, all at the top end of the pyramid now. So, but again, like 3-4 years ago, that wasn't the case.
Is that just due to the money?
I think so. They obviously have a lot more investment on the face of it, but they also are able to attract big crowds. Like Leeds United at the minute are tier 3, but they're attracting the biggest crowds within that region. So I think Sunday they got the maximum the biggest crowd that was 4,600 people, which is exceptional.
At Ellen Road?
Yeah, Ellen Road.
What's the maximum capacity there?
It'd be like 30. Yeah.
So it's still a long way to go to compare to the men's.
Massive, yeah, and that's the debate that we had before. Like, the crowds have grown, but they're some way away. But you see these teams now growing with the game on the basis that, you know, if a football fan wanted to come to a ground, they're going to go to Ellen Road as opposed to like many of the lower league teams. So a lot of the fans come for that experience and then they're hooked. So,
what other factors are there apart from the money that separate the men's and the women's pay and the differences there?
I think the other biggest thing is probably their international reach. So a lot of these clubs, Man United, City, Liverpool, Chelsea, all have their academies abroad, and they're all now able to integrate women's into those academies and reach those international players. That seems to be more and more prevalent now. Even looking at the Championship with Sheffield United and those guys. So yeah, their international reach is definitely a big player in the game.
You mentioned academies. Is that young players?
Yeah, so they have, like, most academies now call themselves ETCs, so emerging talent centres. And they range from 10 through to 16 or under 8s in most cases.
What's the best age to scout a player?
I have a little bit of a bias to the sort of youth development phase. So I do think that kids should be left alone to play football. I don't think, that if you're 8, 9, 10 years old, you should be necessarily listening or sort of running off what your coach says. You should just be instinctive, and they should guide you in that, but that's all they should do. In terms of the best age to scout a player, I would say it's getting younger, but maybe in and around 14, 15 now. My brother-in-law's son just went to his first training session. He was like 3, and he's explaining how chaotic it was. Like, they were just running around smashing balls. I just said, like, that's the best thing. Like, let them enjoy their time. Like, yeah, there'll come a time where you can't necessarily enjoy it, and it's not as enjoyable. So just let them enjoy it.
Do the leagues work the same as for example, Premier League and Championship, League 1, League 2? Are the leagues the same in female football?
Slightly. So for instance, in our Tier 5 league, we're in the Premier of that division, so in Tier 5, and then it's North, South, Central. One team goes up from 2, 3 come down from ours, and then one goes up from ours into National League, which is Tier 4. So from Tier 4 upwards, they're all the exact same, but in Tier 5 or just below us, there are differentiations there.
And then it goes up from Tier 4 to...
Yeah, just a Tier 3, and then Championship, WSL.
So WSL, Championship, Tier 3.
Yeah.
4, 5, North.
Yeah, North, South, Central, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are becoming more aware of the female game. But realistically, to watch a women's game in real life or on TV, what are the main differences that a non-educated viewer would see between watching a League 2 or a League 2 men's team playing against, or even just watching the difference between the female game?
It's a conversation that always seems to come up, and we always give like different answers each time. I think women are generally just a lot like friendlier, so they'll make a foul, and like the typical thing that I see every single week, someone will make a foul, the game will be going on, and one of the girls will stop and just ask if they're all right. So like, you would never see that in the men's game. Like, they're very in tune that the game carries on. When it stops, you come back and shake hands, whatever. But I think the women's game is played at a lot more friendly level, I guess.
Do you think that's because the spoils are not quite worth what they are in the men's? Listening to John Terry talk about what it was like, even in the England team, when there was the Chelsea, Manchester United, Liverpool, before City really came on the scene, he said that they were literally not really wanting to sit next to each other in the England camp because they were that competitive in their Premier League and Champions League seasons. Yeah. They didn't want to let anybody in the other teams know anything about things they were doing at club level. Do you think that the women's game hasn't got to that point where there's the competitiveness there yet?
Yeah, I'd never really looked at it like that, but it does ring true. That they don't have the spoils that the men have, and they don't have this sort of battle, if you like. A lot of it is new for them. So like being called up to England, there are England colleges that one of our players has just been called up for. So there are many different pathways into that England setup.
Just when I was doing the episode prep, I was thinking about the dynamics of coaching, leadership, and thinking about a female dressing room versus a male dressing room, and the way that you have to look after certain players or certain members of a team in any aspect, whether it's football or sport or even business. Yeah. Is it the same? Do the dynamics of how you coach the women differ if they were a group of men?
Yeah, for sure it does, yeah. I think just on a very basic level of like, I'm a male, so like I understand male banter more. I understand where the line is a little bit more. Whereas in the women's game, half of them will be having banter, and I'll be like, it'll go well over my head.
In what sense?
Well, they'll be laughing and joking about like their relationship, their partner being a whatever, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that sounds like me. That's what my missus would say. That's all I offer to that bit of banter. So yeah, it's difficult to navigate at times because you don't necessarily understand, but really, really enjoyable. Like, yeah.
You did just say though struggle to sometimes see where the line is
Mm.
with the banter.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly do you mean by you struggle to see the line?
So in my time in football, I have seen, and I genuinely believe that male coaches or male managers in the women's game, they're very much scrutinised. And in my time in the game, I've seen three male managers being dismissed, like investigated, outed, for what they like deem as being banter. And like in a male dressing room, that might be the case. But then if in a female dressing room, it's pulled up. And so I'm very conscious of those things all the time. And yeah, very aware that male coaches, male managers in the female game are not imposters, but they aren't as valued as like what would be a female coach, because we want to lift those female coaches up, and that's absolutely right. But yeah, I'm very aware of those things.
Do you feel, though, they are asking for equality in one way, and then what you just said there means they're not asking for equality in how you act or men act towards them?
I think what I look at there is the fact that they ask for equality, and we want equality in the game, but subconsciously there are things that won't be bridged. The men's game, would they accept a female manager? I don't know, maybe not. And there'll be scrutiny around that. And similar with the women's game, would they prefer a female manager? Probably. And I find it difficult to see us ever getting away from those things, if I'm honest.
What kind of coach are you on the touchline?
I would say I avoid the Sunday League chants because I think they're rather embarrassing. I have a wicked team around me now, and we have like 7 or 8 members of staff with me who spot things, keep me in check when I need to be. I don't shout at referees. I think that's very pointless. I just shout informative things, but I also acknowledge that 5% of that is probably going to go in or reach the player.
I just shout informative things.
Yeah.
So if I took a snapshot of your touchline,
I'd be a philosopher. Yeah. It'd be like closing up different spaces or having a look. A lot of the time, we take like 2 or 3 touches in a space that ruins the momentum of the game. So it'd be, informative to their position or what's happening in the game.
have you ever got carried away with your emotions on the touchline?
Oh, all the time, yeah. If I, and I told Rob, my assistant, if I ever shout a ref, tell me to go and sit down, because that's a point where you lose your cool. Like, I would never shout a ref. Even now in the Premier League, maybe go and shout a ref because you have VAR, which is useless anyway. But if I shout a ref, you know that I'm shouting for something to go right, and I'm focusing on the wrong thing. But yeah, the emotion of the game is what everyone's in it for. So I wouldn't take that away either. But I need people like Rob and the guys to keep me in check sometimes.
You mentioned that that'd be shouting the wrong thing. What's the right thing?
I just think information all the time and focusing on us as a team. I think if you're shouting referees, if you're shouting at other factors in the game, you give players the opportunity to do the same. And if they're doing the same, then their mind is elsewhere and they need to focus on what they need to do in their improvement. So yeah, I don't want to set that precedence for anyone else.
You mentioned earlier you didn't want to interfere with the kids too young.
Mm-hmm.
The sort of certain age you thought was appropriate to get involved with football or get more involved with the coaches, certainly.
Yeah.
Is there a sign or a time that you can distinguish between a good player and a truly great player in that process?
Yeah, I think you can very much tell a player who has grown up with football and have football at their feet, as opposed to a player that's coming in and learning it as a new skill. I think it's more about the balance of the football. So if you look comfortable dribbling around, you'll see like little kids dribbling in and out of cones all the time. But yeah, you can tell a child who's not done that, and yeah, they'll be balancing like this, and yeah, it'd be crazy. So yeah, that's the biggest observational difference anyway.
Do you think that you're considered a great coach or a good coach?
Just a coach, maybe. Yeah, I think
Way to sit on the fence.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I'm very early in my career, if you like, and it feels like ages. Like I said, like this is my 9th, maybe 10th year in the women's game, and I started coaching when I was very young. So as long as there are teams that beat my teams, I don't think I will ever be great. It's just, yeah, and that's how you have to be. Like if you aren't humble about it, then you can get found out pretty quickly.
You mentioned the balance and the physical attributes that you can see a player who's played younger than potentially someone who's coming into the game later on. Mm. What about mentality perspective?
Difficult. I think if I speak in the women's game, there is a big difference in some of the young players now. They get so much football. They play at college, they play Saturday, they play Sunday. They're exposed to so many coaches. And I think, one, that's brilliant. Like if you can physically endure it, fine, fair dues. But imagine your college team praises you, builds a team around you. Saturday does the same. You get man of the match on a Saturday. Then on a Sunday, you're on the bench. Like, which coach are you going to favour? And off the back of that, mentally, the two other teams aren't preparing you for what is maybe a step up, because your college team is under 16s by and large. Saturday team might be an under 18s team. You come to a first team on a Sunday. The two haven't prepared you for that because you haven't seen the hardship, you haven't seen the physical challenge of that. So yeah, there's a big difference in young players and experienced players in the women's game for sure.
Is that different from the men's?
Difficult for me to say because of the lack of experience that I've seen. I have a fair few mates that play. One of them used to play at Sheffield Wednesday, and plays in the National League and all those things. His display of like mental health in the men's game was horrific. Like, yeah, he was one of my best mates, and when he comes to me speaking about him he was bulimic as a result of sort of being treated at a football club and sort of being pushed out. Like, that was a real eye opener in terms of like my background, how I can treat players and how I can look after people.
You mentioned men's mental health. With a friend of yours there. As your character, would you describe yourself as confident?
I would say externally, yes. Internally, I'm a very emotional person. Very, I don't know, maybe like a thunderstorm, maybe. But in like a positive way.
Like a thunderstorm, but in a positive way.
You know, like you go to a spa and you go to those like showers and it gives you the options. Everyone picks rainstorm, so that's what I would describe it as.
In 2021, life took a little bit of a different turn for you.
Yeah.
For those people who are watching on video, they were able to see the scar that you have on your face.
Yeah.
What happened?
As most of you know, my diet is pretty strict most of the time, so it makes it even more important to me that when I have a cheat meal, it delivers. There is nothing worse than ordering a takeaway and it being wrong, missing items, or just not being what you expected or you hoped for. That's why having the support of Kasim from Bombay Joe's Bingham has been a game changer. Kasim has been a supporter of the podcast from the very beginning, providing all the food for the launch party. And we recently went to see Kasim and the team at Bombay Joe's Bingham, a takeaway restaurant that's a modern-inspired take on Indian street food.
opening 6 days a week, 5 p.m. till late, based in Bingham, Nottingham, and can deliver to a wide radius, including West Bridgeford, serving all of your favourite curries and classic Indian dishes. Kasim has got you covered. And Kasim has put together an exclusive offer just for To The Heart of It listeners. To claim your exclusive offer from Kasim, just visit theheartofitpodcast.com/sponsors, where you can download the Bombay Joe's Bingham app and get your exclusive offer code. And as a thank you to Kasim, our team has put together a special social media pack, which you can check out on their social media on Instagram at Bombay Joe's Bingham, where you can find their latest menus and give them a follow. In 2021, life took a little bit of a different turn for you.
Yeah.
For those people who are watching on video, they're able to see the scar that you have on your face.
Yeah.
What happened?
So we, me and my friends, we'd normally do something on New Year's Eve. It just so happened this time we didn't do it. We did it on the 30th of December. We'd all gone out and had a few cocktails because we weren't meeting up on New Year's Eve this year. Yeah, we went into a bar that was completely empty, no bouncers. And yeah, 2 guys came in and had an agenda. Ended up glassing me over the head. And that's the closest I've been to death. So, yeah.
That was the closest I've been to death.
Yeah.
What exactly happened?
Yeah, the 2 guys came in. They said they knew one of the girls, so they said hello to her. We obviously greeted them, like fairly friendly people. They went out to the smoking area, came back in, and sat down. To which, yeah, we were just like, okay, come join. Like, yeah. They'd sort of said that, we know this girl because we'd slept with her. And that was like an entry comment. It was like, oh, okay, like, come on. Yeah, good one. But these guys, so her boyfriend was one of the lads. And they'd been together like 4.5 years. But they did have a break, so like it was possible. We tried to brush it off, and then they just kept going and going and going, and just then it turned out that the second guy had slept with her as well. We were like, man.
So there's 12 or 13 of you, mixed men and women, in a bar.
Yeah.
New Year's Eve. 2 guys come into the bar, sit down with you because they know one of the girls.
Yeah.
One of the girls that they know was with one of the boys there with you in a relationship for 4 years or so. And both of these men who sat down with you claimed that they both slept with this girl.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then you obviously get the idea that they're not here for a good time. Yeah, so I sort of took it upon myself. And this is where like the reflection after became really difficult. So I'd stood up and just said, look, just do one. There's no one else in here. You don't have to be here. Like, you can go and sit at any other table. And at that point, I actually don't remember a great deal. The reason I know the next step is the sergeant who was dealing with my case came and said on the CCTV, as I'd stood up, the guy who did glass me threw a glass. So I ducked out of the way. His friend threw another one. And as I moved up out of that one, the guy leant across with it in his hand and smashed me over the head. To which I remember that bit, because that's the bit I had nightmares about, like, for months. And, yeah, I woke up. There's like a semi-funny story that I can tell. As I sat up, it burst an artery in the side of my head. Like, this is like the main artery for your head. And as I'd sat up, the girl started screaming, but I couldn't see it out of my left eye. Like, it was just blood. But I could feel blood spraying out my head. But I've never experienced that before in my life. So how do you compute what's happening? So as the girls are screaming, I'm going around like this, on like, I don't know, like a Wembley sprinkler, just spraying blood on everyone, and everyone's running away. And then out the corner of my eye, I can see the lads like wrestling each other. And then that's the point where, like, naturally I'll just go and help. Stand up, fell down, bosh, couldn't see. Like, yeah. And then from there, all I remember is these 2 police officers coming in, bunch of tea towels, asking for more tea towels. And he sat on my head, and it felt like 7, 8 knives pushed into your head. And later on, like when I woke up in the hospital, like, he's a big bloke. Like, yeah, that's the most excruciating pain I've ever experienced.
From the initial glassing or the tea towels?
The tea towels, yeah. I didn't feel the glass, like I didn't. Yeah, I barely remembered that.
So you moved out the way for one glass, then someone smashed the other glass into your face.
The second glass, so he was like sat like opposite like this, so he threw one. His mate was sat next to him. So as I moved out the way, he tried to get me here. And then as I moved out the way of that, he got up, bosh.
So there was
third glass.
2 thrown glasses, and the initial guy then proceeded to actually physically glass you, as in contact.
Yeah, like had it in his hand. His hand must have been messed up, I don't know.
Then you tried to stand up, spraying blood everywhere, and then went down.
Yeah.
And then you only remember waking up in the hospital.
No, there are a few bits in between. So, like, I remember the policeman sitting on my head. That was excruciating.
When you say sitting on your head,
so I felt his knee. So, like, he was sat on my head with its knee, and sort of asking for more tea towels, and I could see his arms, so I knew that it wasn't like his head, his arms, and I felt his like leg and my back
to support you,
just to stop the bleed.
So he was using his knee as pressure.
Yeah, like his weight as pressure. Yeah. That was the bit that I remember. And then I've collapsed like a bunch of times in my life. Like I collapsed like maybe 11, 12 times. No one ever knows why. But I felt myself collapsing. And I know what the triggers are, like my vision will go blurry, blah, blah. And I was telling this police officer, I'm going to collapse. This is what happens. Like, this isn't new to me, but I'm going to collapse. And he's interpreted that as I'm going to die. Like, at no point did I go, yeah, I'm going to die. I was actually fairly naive. Like, I knew that I wasn't going to die. It's weird. But as I collapsed, I'm still conscious. So all I remember is him getting scissors, cutting all my clothes. I was like, oh, man. And then I remember moving my right arm and like tapping him, and then he stopped. Because what I did have a real fear of was him getting like a defib out and then shocking me with that. And obviously I know that defibs don't work like that, but in that moment I was really scared about him killing me accidentally. And then in the ambulance, I was vomiting blood. And this is the only time I thought I was going to die. In the ambulance, I just remember them saying, you need to pull over because you're losing too much blood. And as they pull over, I vomit, which is all blood. And then as I'm vomiting blood, the bandage is so tight on my head, but I can feel the blood coming out of my head, my nose, my mouth, like the grimmest sight. And yeah, that's a point where I thought, I'm probably knocking on the door of death here.
That must have been quite the night.
Yeah, definitely not the quiet 30th of December that anyone anticipated. It all sort of, comes together. I woke up in the hospital. The doctor was there with the 2 police officers and one of the lads. And it was the most poignant moment when the doctor had said, if it wasn't for that police officer or police officers being ex-military, I would have died. Like, I was 30 to 40 seconds away from bleeding out. And then it's like, I couldn't speak. How do you thank someone for saving your life, realistically? Like, everyone has this like idea of, oh, you're a hero, I can't thank you enough, and blah blah. All I did is cry, and that's all I could do.
Have you managed to speak to those police officers since?
No. We tried to sort of get to. I've reached out to the police station and just said, look, who was on duty at this time? Like, I really want to thank these people. And they obviously couldn't share those information, because how often does somebody reach out to the police force and go, I want to thank these people? I assume not a lot. They couldn't share it because of like data protection and all those things. So yeah, my biggest regret is the fact that I didn't manage to verbalize many things to those guys. Of course, I did say thank you eventually, but I didn't get to verbalize how significant that was.
Sat here now thinking about that. If they were listening to this, especially the one who was the one with his knee on your head.
Yeah.
What would you say to him?
I don't know how to put into words the fact that somebody has the chance to turn someone's life upside down by glassing them, but he had the chance to take the ruins of that and allow it to carry on. And how do you thank someone enough for that? Like, he would just say, and I vaguely remember this conversation, he was like, look, we are just doing our jobs, like this is the norm for us. I don't think there's anything that I could say to them that gives them enough value, gives them enough justice, that these guys, without them, I wouldn't be here. So,
where was this incident?
I was in Loughborough, small town, Revolution Bar. Not too many places in Loughborough to go to. So, yeah.
What police force is that?
They have their own. I don't know what they're called. I'm going to say Loughborough Police Force.
Is it in where's Loughborough?
East Midlands.
East Midlands.
Yeah, it'd be the East Midlands guys.
You mentioned them being military, former military. What did that have to do with the reason they saved your life?
Because of it was basically like a compound wound. Like, from the photos, like the scar here is obviously the most prevalent now, but my skin was like literally hanging off and blood spraying out of it. So to deal and compress a compound wound in the way that they did, and the instinctiveness of what they did, was what was significant about that.
So you wake up in the hospital, 30th, 31st of December.
Yeah, I think, it might have been still the 30th. Yeah, this wasn't late, like it was maybe 10 p.m, I don't know.
2 police officers, doctor, one of your friends, they tell you this information, that this has happened. These officers have saved your life.
Yeah.
What happens next in that situation?
I had a decision to make, and that was if I should tell anyone about it, because the doctor came in and said, look, you need surgery. Obviously you need surgery. And there are 2 things that we can do. We can rummage around for the glass that still remains in your head, or we can sew it up as neatly as we possibly can, and you'll have the best recovery rate that is possible for scars to not impact your life when they're on the side of your face. So, and my mum to this day would deck me for doing this, but I decided not to tell anyone, because I'd rather, and this was the start of what is a really horrible demise, because I thought, right, this has happened, I'm going to get through on my own. Like, I don't need anyone. I don't want anyone to carry me. And that was the first instinctive decision that I thought, no one needs to know. I'll tell them when I'm out. And that's what I did. I went to surgery, stayed in. I think I wasn't in hospital for more than maybe a day. I came out the next afternoon. Yeah.
Just in time for New Year's.
Just in time, yeah. In fact, no. Yeah, I missed that one. Yeah, it must have been just over a day. Yeah, because I was in New Year's. I remember I came out of surgery and I posted a story because I felt like it was my place now to say, listen, if you're going out, like, recognize that one action can dismantle a person's life. And that was maybe me being really emotional about it. But it was factual at the time.
You mentioned it was the beginning of the demise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Everything from that point forward changed. Like and during sort of my rebuild, if you like, I always sort of animate the explanation as before that one moment, I was like a character that stood tall, knew what they valued, would go like a bull in a china shop to get what I wanted to get to. And the second animation is an animation that looks like a homeless person, like they scruffy. I'm not scruffy, but like scruffy, sat down, would just say yes if it meant no conflict, and sort of just merged into society, whereas the other guy would move mountains. And that was sort of my biggest superpower, is the fact that I was so naive before about, I didn't fear dying. I didn't fear anyone saying no to me. I didn't fear conflict before. Everything that I was before was a forward mover. And everything that I became subsequently from that is a stationary person.
You said you were so close to death in the back of that ambulance.
Mm-hmm.
If I said to you that maybe you did die that day, how close would that be to the truth of who Adam was and who Adam now is?
Yeah. The biggest part of my therapy was getting over that. So if I'd have died there and then, people would think I was a thug, goes and fights in bars, associate me with a sort of person that would be involved in that. Because if you really knew me, like, never thrown a punch in my life. And I don't get involved in those conflicts. Like, I just don't do that. To the people that know me, if I'd have died there and then, they would have had a good reflection of who I would like to be throughout my adult life. Who I am now is difficult because I am still successful to some degree, and I'd like to think that people thought that, but I also have this innate fear of conflict, and I will sometimes conform just for avoidance of that, which isn't what I was before.
It's coming up to the anniversary of the event.
Yeah.
How are you in your journey of therapy and getting yourself, I say back, but forward maybe?
Yeah. It's been a long time. We sort of go through, I've been through so many therapists in the 3, maybe 4 years now, that it's been going on. And it seems to have staggered, but now I'm at the end of it where, like, I'm able to talk about it now. So that's like the big thing, that I can now use it as a power to help people see that people are stupidly powerful, like stupidly powerful, especially when like alcohol and things are involved, because you see so many stories, don't you, about somebody getting pushed over when they're drunk and they're not here anymore. And I think that's the big thing that I would like anyone to understand is how powerful they are. But also that just because you've changed as a person doesn't necessarily mean it's over.
Doesn't mean it's necessarily over.
Hmm.
What do you mean? Do you mean that this comes with you every single day?
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody asked me the other day, what are your sort of struggles with mental health now? And I just said, I don't have mental health struggles. It's me now. Like you have to just accept that it's with you. I kind of try to use the analogy of like bereavement. Like somebody dies, I'm very fortunate that that's not happened to me, but if somebody died, that would be heartbreaking. And that would change a lot of perspective you had on life and time. But you have to move with the times. That it doesn't change that they're dead. Like those things, but you have to move forward. So yeah, I have to consciously check in sometimes that why did I just conform? I had an opinion and I think it's a really valuable one. What stops me from doing that? And sometimes it is just a case of I don't want conflict. And I think there's a humility part of that okay, you don't have to. This guy before would go like a bullet in a china shop. I don't need. There's a middle ground.
You mentioned therapies.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of therapy have you had?
So one of our mutual friends is a fireman. So I went to him first and foremost because I was, oh man, like that was tough. And there's a therapist in the fire service who has obviously supported firemen, and firemen have seen like our mutual friend he's seen so many things that I don't know how he goes to work. So he was like the most important step, and he was actually the first person that said, look, you won't get over this. Like you won't, it's not a medication that you can take and just carry on. Like this will be with you now forever. That was a real kick in the teeth, because you take the bandage off, all these stitches, like I almost lost my eye, there's a few scars around my eye, and you take the bandage off, you think, it's just the stitches. When you get the stitches out, it'll be fine. Take the stitches out, it's just because you've got the stitches out. In a week's time, it'll be fine. And you're constantly looking for this, it'll be over at some point. And I should have listened to Paul at the time, because he was right. Like it stays with you. So I saw him in terms of a little bit of a more of a check-in. He wasn't necessarily a therapist. He didn't have that level of time, and but I really do appreciate that analysis that he did with me. And then I went through the NHS and did some talking therapists, and we did some sort of PTSD work, and a lot of it was around my sort of depression, anxiety, not words that I would ever associate with me.
I had an incident not like yours. Unfortunately, mine was mostly, or certainly a large majority, my own decisions and choices versus someone else doing something like that to me.
Yeah.
Back in 2021, January.
Same year.
2021. Very different from yours. I'm not comparing them at all. But I went through very similar in the sounds of what you just described, of people who would have known me before, and then people who saw me 2 years after, and certainly still carry all of it now with me still.
Yeah.
Lose huge parts of myself, who I was, how I showed up in the world for a long period of time. Like, even scared to go outside. Didn't like going outside. Everyone's just too much to mentally cope with and deal with. Didn't want to speak to anybody. Didn't want to do anything. It's very difficult, especially we mentioned female football versus men's football. Women talk about things a lot more, obviously, than men.
Yeah.
You mentioned there not speaking to anybody, decided to keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
The mutual friend you just mentioned also, not just his fire service career, but other things that he's been through in his life, when you listed them out, are absolutely out of this world.
Yeah.
And you think you walk around with this stuff every day. And even people who you know very well don't know any of it at all.
Yeah.
What do you think is the message to be taken from not only what you're sharing, but multiple men that we know talking about these sorts of things that they never share with anybody?
I think it goes beyond this whole narrative of like men can talk, men can do this. Like I mentioned before, in the football world, like there are subconscious things that I don't think will necessarily change. Like I think as much as like my missus is brilliant, I still feel a certain way about being that open about like my struggles. Like you want to be, as a man, you want to be that person. So I think it goes beyond being able to talk about it. I think men are much better at talking about it, and like I certainly am far better at talking about these things now. But I think the biggest thing for me, like this now, like I'm able to speak to other men about what has happened, the struggles that I have. I think that's more powerful to me in my experience than being able to open up, because the whole narrative is around we don't talk because we feel a certain way and women won't respect us in the same way, blah, blah. Like that's not been the case for me. Like I have resonated more from conversations with other men comparing our stories than it is about opening up to like the world about it. But I think we are better at talking about those things, and I think we should connect more as a male population on these struggles, because like our friend is now doing walks and hikes to raise awareness and get people together and get men together, get them trying. And I think that's significant. But above that is just understanding how powerful we are as people, male or female.
When you say powerful, you mentioned that earlier on in terms of the impact that they had on you that night. When you woke up and you had that interaction with those officers and the doctor and decided to go on your own, what do the next few months look like in terms of your life?
Yeah, pretty dark. Everything you described, I resonate with. I would walk past a building and try and I went the complete opposite way. Like I didn't not want to go out. Like I made a real effort to go out. Like the day I came out of hospital, I had this massive bandage on. Me and Jack, one of the lads, went to this cafe, had some breakfast because I didn't want it to stop me and I didn't want to be this victim. So I forced myself to do those things instantly. Like I wasn't taking a breather from anything. I went to the gym with a bandage on my head, like stupid. As we walked out of that restaurant, I couldn't see out of my left eye still. So I thought the door was magnetic, turned a switch, and it turned all the lights off in the restaurant. So everyone was looking at me, and I was like, okay, that's like a real, somebody's telling you that you should probably just take some time, yeah.
Do you think people treat you differently because of your scar?
I think a lot of people, so I moved away from Loughborough. Loughborough's not a great place for me. So thankfully, a lot of the people that know me don't know any different. And that wasn't necessarily a conscious decision. But the people that know me before will always say, "Are you okay?" And I'll be like, "Yeah." "Are you?" And they'll be like, "You sure?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm fine." Like, don't ask me in that way. But you have to be careful because people are trying to look out for you, aren't they? But yeah, I think the subtle things like that are the things that change. And those are the things that ground on me.
Do you think they actually would be able to handle the weight if you actually told them, when they ask you how you felt, if you told them the truth?
No. I say I'm a really emotional person. I'm incredibly emotional, but I will only be emotional at breaking point, like visibly. Like, I couldn't tell you how many times I cried on my own. That's fine to me. But I would only be visibly emotional if I was at breaking point. And I think to this day, the only time I cried during that period was the day after I saw one of my friends whose girlfriend it was, and he like blamed himself. He'd obviously rocked up to my house and seen that I had this massive bandage on, and he like burst into tears. And like, yeah, as an emotional person, that's a trigger for me. So I just kind of hugged him, cried, and just said, look, it's not your fault. It is what it is.
Why did you move away?
I kind of didn't enjoy Loughborough anyway as a kid. I thought there wasn't a lot going on. There's a wicked university there and all those things, but there's so many times you can walk around a university campus. So I always thought that I wanted to do more, be more, than this normal guy. Like, my mum and dad are amazing. They do very normal jobs. My dad's a butcher. My mum was a teacher and a teaching assistant. So, like, I just wanted to be more.
You mentioned in the ambulance feeling like you were going to die. After the event, did you ever feel like you wanted to kill yourself?
My training routine has always been a big part of my life, and managing recovery and injury prevention has never been more of a focus of mine. Trying to maintain energy for the long sessions whilst making sure my mind is also kept on top form to continue all of the commitments that my schedule demands. That's why having the support of Harvinder at Glasshouse Pharmacy has been a real game changer. Harvinder has been with us from the very start, regularly topping me and the team up with the latest state-of-the-art IV drips. These treatments really are the real deal, used by elite athletes, entrepreneurs, and even cancer patients to boost performance, aid recovery, and keep you going strong. Whether it's improving sleep, enhancing overall health, or even supporting symptoms related to the menopause, Harvinder and his team have got something for everyone. And just for To The Heart of It listeners, Harvinder has put together something special. To claim your exclusive offer, go to theheartofitpodcast.com/sponsors, where you can download the Get IV offer. Thanks to Harvinder and Glasshouse Get IV for helping us stay healthy, energized, and keeping the podcast running strong. And since being a guest on the podcast, Harvinder and our team have been working on Harvinder's very own podcast, Behind the Symptoms, where Harvinder discusses all the IV drips and their health benefits, amongst much more. If you want to check out Behind the Symptoms, you can. Just visit theheartofitpodcast.com/Behind the Symptoms. Thanks to Harvinder again.
Did you ever feel like you wanted to kill yourself?
Did I feel it? 100%. Like, I always go back to Gary Speed was like my first real exposure to suicide, and on the basis that he was a figure that I looked up to, and I thought, what level do you need to be in that headspace to take your own life? Like, that's wild to me. But I've been there. Like, and I'm sure you were the same with the things that you were saying, because it all resonate with me, that you end up not wanting to go outside, you force yourself to do things. I walked past a window once, and it just so happened the window was this side, so I could see my scars, and I was like, oh man. And at that point, the entire high street I walked down, like, with almost my shoulder brushing against the building, because I didn't want people to be on this side of me. And at that point, when you get that low, and you're thinking, I now have to avoid people being on my left side. Christ, what is this life? So, yeah, I definitely felt it, thought it. Would I have ever done it, and was it an ever option? No. I think that I have too much respect and too much gratitude for people that had supported me along the way to ever have that as an option. Oh, yeah, Jesus, it was tough. Like, it was tough that is a subconscious feeling, but there are times where you have to question that for sure.
Yeah, it's a difficult place, especially when people don't understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they're asking you to talk about it.
Yeah,
and your feelings.
Yeah,
as you said, they couldn't handle the weight.
Yeah, no, I almost don't want them to have to take that weight. Like, this is a me problem, so let me deal with it. And in doing that, I did that for like 6 months. Like, I went to the gym, just carried on my life. I didn't care that I had these stitches hanging out my head, like all those things. So yeah, but you quickly realize that you can't get through these things on your own, and you have to get help else. Every time you walk past the window, you're gonna be tripping out.
It was in a public bar. The police were involved.
Mm-hmm.
What happened with the offence?
Remember them saying, losing too much blood. Bonuses to Loughborough is there are CCTV like everywhere. So they're able to track A, the incident inside the bar, but B and C, the direction that they travelled. They literally recorded them the whole way. I managed to get them like 5-10 minutes later after they legged it. So there was never any doubt that they did it. So
they were on CCTV glassing you.
Yeah. I've still, to this day, not seen it.
You haven't seen the video?
No, I really wanted to, because I thought that's going to be a really important part. Like, throughout the whole reflection, I ended up blaming myself for, like, why did I have to stand up? Like, why didn't I just sit down and tell him to do one? Like, why? There are so many things that I blame myself for. I didn't have any blame on anyone else. So that was a really important bit of clarity for me, that actually, and like, now you get to a point where you could have said anything to them. It doesn't warrant what they did. But yeah, that would have been real clarity to me.
Do you know what they're arrested for?
Yeah, this is where my issue with the justice system comes in. But they're arrested for a branch of GBH, but it was in the accidental category.
They were arrested for a brand of GBH, but in the accidental category. What is the accidental category of GBH? Yeah,
so basically they couldn't find any way that they'd planned the attack. They didn't target me necessarily. They didn't go out of their way to do what they did.
So without intent?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. That was where I kind of lost my head a little bit, because when the sergeant tells you it's accidental, and you're like, come on, like, the guy had a glass in his hand. Like, I beg to think what his hand's like now. How could that possibly be accidental? And then he explains it, and it's like, what can you do? Like, you can't go and fight the justice system. So
how did the sergeant explain to you how two men in a bar, one threw a glass at you, you dodged it, you dodged back the other way, another glass you missed, and then the first man smashed a glass into your face on CCTV? How did he explain to you that was an accident?
Just how I explained it. Like, they didn't plan it, they didn't execute like an assassination, for example, on me. They didn't target me as an individual. They had accompanied it with like an apology, which to this day, like, it doesn't really resonate with me. But they were basically said that they were both on whatever drugs. They didn't remember a single thing, and that to me was like the biggest insult, because you've done this crazy thing, you don't even remember it. I can't stop remembering it. So where's the balance in that?
You've done this crazy thing, you can't even remember it.
Yeah.
I can't stop remembering it.
Yeah. It's just, for maybe just over a year. All I could think about, go to sleep with, was this guy, a different guy each night maybe, with a glass in his hand like this, over me. And I'd wake up every time. 1, 2 a.m. It's a horrible year.
And they told you that it was an accident.
Yeah.
I understand not necessarily setting out that night to intend to harm you
for
or
sure.
anyone.
Yeah.
But to say that in the moment that he put a glass into his hand and then struck it onto your face was not an accident, intentional to do that.
That's where I lost a bit of belief in the justice system. And like the guys, they both got sent down for 6 months, both of them.
So they both were sentenced to custodial sentences.
Yeah. But like by and large, I didn't even care about the second guy. He threw a glass and missed, but he gets sent down for the same period of time. And I was like, what is this? Like, what is the explanation cannot be the same for that guy. And I never got that question answered because it didn't matter to me. But yeah, you lose a lot of faith in what the justice system is there to do. And no matter how, like I explained to the guys, like they could give me £5 million in compensation. They could get sent down for life. It wouldn't make any difference to me because I would give it all back for it not to happen.
So what were they sentenced for? If they were charged with a brand of DBH, but then it turned into accidental, do you know what they were sentenced to?
They were sentenced to 6 months each, but to my understanding, they got out within 3
months.
Yeah.
How long did it go on for you?
To this day, like I said, it's who I am now. It's you have to live with it.
It's hard.
Yeah, and that's the bit that it's difficult.
Have they ever apologized to you?
They apologized through the sergeant, but it's like the apology was accompanied with this statement of I don't remember it. So why are you apologizing? You don't know what you're apologizing for. Like, this person could be sending you a picture of my head screwed up, and he could just be accusing you of something you didn't do. You don't even remember it, so don't apologize for it. Like, that apology meant nothing to me.
I can understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
Do you think that's part of your acceptance to heal from that part of it?
The biggest thing that I sort of took away from that whole sort of healing, getting over it process was the fact that you have to accept that there's not always an explanation. There's not like an outcome. And I take that now, like the critics you have in football are wild. Like they have no background, they have no education within football, they have no anything. But you have to accept that, all right, if you tell me 5 + 5 is 10, or if you tell me 5 + 5 is 23, both of you are right, I don't care. And that's what you have to compartmentalize, and that's what I've grappled with for so long. But yeah, that acceptance of I won't get an apology, I don't want an apology, I just want to live my life.
How do you think that incident has affected your coaching?
Well, it put it on hold for quite a while. Obviously, you're stepping into the women's game, and as a male stepping into a women's environment, that comes with a whole lot of judgment. And so that was difficult, because you know that women spot these things and they will judge you in so many different ways. Not necessarily in a negative way, but they'll have a preconceived idea about how they got there. And
as in you were fighting?
Yeah. And so that was really difficult. I lost a great deal of confidence. Like, I didn't want to. Football comes with a lot of conflict, and I didn't want conflict, so I stopped for a good period of time. I then went back into a coaching team, so I wasn't necessarily a manager, but I was part of a coaching team at Loughborough, and the guys there were wicked with me. Like, they're so good. Still speak to them now, and having allies in football is why I'm still here in football, because without them, yeah, you are nothing.
Do you think it's made you a better or a worse coach?
I think it's made me a more grounded, let's say, coach, and my approach now is always with sort of a caveat that you can always work and improve things. Things don't hit me as hard because nothing will compare to that event. Like, it doesn't scratch the surface. I could get sacked from a football club and it wouldn't scratch the surface. So you have to take things and just go, okay, they are what they are. But I think in making me grounded, it's made me more open to people and other people taking a role within my team. I've gone from being one person with one assistant to now having 8, 9 people, which allows me to step back at certain points.
I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing how you have. It's quite a thing to go through.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, and like I said, like, these conversations hopefully not only help other people, but they actually really do help me, and that's why I'm at a place where I'm able to talk about it, is because of people like you and these conversations, because without them I don't think I would be able to do this.
You've held your emotions quite well during the conversation.
Yeah.
The part you're emotional about the most was when we spoke about the sentencing.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think it is about that causes you still to feel emotional?
You have to sort of constantly remind yourself that this is still with you. Like, I go about my life now fairly normally, but it'll catch up with me at different points. And that's just a reminder that it is still with me and it doesn't leave me. And the sentencing part is, I don't look at it in terms of their sentence. I look at it in terms of my sentence. And that is what hits me, because that's a life sentence.
I was just worried about how to say that exact thing, and you just took the words straight out of my mouth.
Yeah.
That night they gave you a life sentence.
Yeah. And that's the difficult part, because you have to. I started a new job, and in every single one of the conversations in the first month was, "Hi, I'm Adam. By the way, this happened because," and you have to explain yourself before you've even met the person, and that's crazy, and that does something to someone that you could never replicate, especially a male. Like, first impressions as a man are one of the most important things as a male person. So to have to go into a room, almost yield before you've said more than hello, you almost, like, I imagine it as getting down on my knees and going, please don't judge me, because this actually wasn't my fault. But you can't see that, because the subconscious mind doesn't allow people to go, it was your fault. Like, you had a part to play. Like, yeah. So you have to, explain yourself before you say hello to people.
What does the future hold for Adam Rawlings?
I hope for more of the same. This year has been a pretty successful year. I have a new job, I have a new football club, and hopefully things this year start to come together. I hope that I can further distance myself from the emotion within this. and yeah, just continue to progress and prove to people that these aren't factors that hold you back. Actually, you can use them and move forward. That's what I hope. Let's see.
Thanks so much for coming on, mate. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate your time. Thank you for having me.